Since you, are you gonna need your?
No. Oh, I don't know. Am I announcing the speakers? Or no? Are they all doing it down there?
Meeting. I think we can be called up. And then we just in the off chance that this goes really well. Microphone charging, so we can swap that, right? And have yours. That guys.
There should be a couple back
I don't
there.
want anybody. Just in case. Yeah.
I'm going to start it right now. To get the.
Ooh. I should have offered to help me type it in. Sorry, my brain is slow.
You ready? Yep. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We are going to call our Special Laws and Rules Committee meeting to order now. It's 7:05. I want to welcome you all here. Thank you for your patience. We ran a little late. We will open up for public comment. We're going to give each speaker 3 minutes, such as we do with our regular council meetings. So we ask that you would adhere to that time. And is Alicia, are you going to call the names?
Sure, I could do that for you.
Okay. I mean, I get it, since you're sitting there. Council President will call the names in the order that they were written on the sign-up sheet. And so we're going to go ahead and begin.
So the first speaker is Rebecca Holderness.
I feel like the guinea pig. Is that it? Hi, it's my first ever meeting. My name's Rebecca Holderness. I'm a Kingston resident. I'm a business owner and I'm also a renter. And I'm speaking in support of the zoning reform for Kingston. I find Kingston a unique place in the county and in the world, old of history, but urban and diverse, and unique in its potential to be a real leader in how to grow a small city equitably. Kingston traditions are part of its claim on further growth for sure, but without new growth in buildings and businesses, there will not be long-term economic growth. I've spent considerable time studying the zoning plan, and this is what I love about it. The zoning reform, because it is actually neighborhood-centered, design and demographically aware, can help Kingston pull together as it grows, rather than pull apart and displace its current residents. The zoning proposal retains the nature of each area while spearheading development sensibly and offers opportunity to encourage development with grants and expedited approvals for the unique and underserved areas of the city. The zoning reform as proposed can be used as a platform for improving public spaces and road safety. The zoning proposed will also address the need for more housing and fewer Airbnb, and encourage the building of ADU by and for the local community. I hope that in passing the zoning reform, the City of Kingston also provides education, tools, online and off, and create forums for each resident in the community to understand and have agency in the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Father Frank Ogna.
Thank you. I didn't know I had 3 minutes, but I'll try to adhere to 3 minutes. I'm here on behalf of the Kingston Interfaith Council to speak to a too long unmet and now increasingly pressing need, the need for more affordable and accessible housing. I want to appear to your better angels. I know you all care, and you wouldn't be here in this room this evening if you didn't care. But I want to challenge you to care possibly in a different way. When people are homeless, when people are living on the streets or in their cars, when 2 or 3 families must live in an apartment intended as a one-family dwelling, when human beings are made to live in apartments that are unsanitary and infested with vermin and rodents, or sustain unremedied utilities breakdowns, or when people are made to pay rents that outsize their take-home pay, government is not meeting its responsibility, and public servants are not abiding by their oath, the oath they'd sworn. Safe and affordable housing is a basic human right. And as we know, the system has been so constructed and so orchestrated that any initiatives to remediate this crisis must make its way through an obstacle course of codes, rules, and regulations that are made a greater priority than the basic human need on the table and the basic human right that is not being met. By way of an example, a month ago, Pastor Jim Childs of Point of Praise Church shared at a meeting of the Interfaith Council that permission was given to build 64 affordable housing units on property adjacent to his church. Good news. He then shared that the request for this construction was made 12 years ago. If something that is clearly good and desperately needed takes 12 years to be put into motion, what does that say about how much there is wrong with the process and the system? Does it not speak volumes about how dysfunctional our normal way of doing business is? This past Thursday, at the June KSA meeting, Pastor Jim announced that the permission has once again been put on hold due to yet another zoning issue, this time environmental, as the land at issue is on a floodplain. For those who identify as Christians, for those of other faiths, or those who do not identify as persons of faith, I hope you're open to hearing a bit of wisdom drawn from the teachings and actions of Jesus that are applicable to the matter at hand. Very often advancing God's will, the God in whom we trust, or simply doing the right thing requires thinking outside the box. Jesus was always thinking outside the box and encouraging others to do the same. Address and meet the need first.
30 seconds.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. And then construct the system around the need having been met. I guess I'm out of time. Okay.
If you still have more comments and want to submit them to us, if you have more written comments and want to submit them to us, you could do that. Thank you. The next speaker is Leo Shupp.
Good evening. Kingston's new form-based code turns our existing zoning on its head. With the density and destruction of our residential neighborhoods coupled with the reduction of available parking it will bring, it is asinine to think it will in any way improve our quality of life. This will have far-reaching effects and will fundamentally change Kingston. This form-based code is of such magnitude that it should be put to the voters in a referendum and not left to an agenda-driven mayor and common council. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ann Stedsch-Ostrander.
Hi, I'm Ann Stedge Atwater. I reside at 2 Hewitt Place in Kingston. I am here because I have some issues with the new zoning codes for Kingston. One of my main concerns is in regard to the parking requirements. From my understanding, and I could be wrong, of the new code, off-street parking spaces for new developments will not be required. I think this is insane. There is a problem already with finding parking in the city of Kingston, and especially in the winter. There must be off-street parking requirements. My other concern is in regard to non-owner occupied Airbnb establishments. If the city is trying to regulate long-term apartments through rent stabilization, why are you allowing non-owner occupied short-term rentals? That will only exacerbate the long-term rental situation. The solution to the housing problem in regard to long-term rentals is to build more housing. I'm also praying that the new zoning requirements will not be detrimental to single-family neighborhoods by encouraging further development of apartments to be created in these neighborhoods. Most existing owners bought their properties in these areas because they found them to be desirable without rental properties being added to their neighborhoods. I don't believe in anything goes zoning. I hope the council takes its time in considering the new zoning codes, and I mean, really take your time to go over it, because this is going to affect the city for a very long time and affect the existing people who live here. Thank you.
Noah Kipler-Ogman.
I'm Noah Kipley-Ogman, a Kingston homeowner and chair of the Kingston Rent Guidelines Board. I am glad that the council and laws and rules are paying close attention to housing supply and affordability as you put the finishing touches on the comprehensive rezoning plan, and I'm proud to live in a city that is paying such careful and close attention to the essential and urgent work that is sometimes mischaracterized as dull. As a member of the city's Rent Guidelines Board, I've heard from renters, prospective renters, owners, and business people about the urgency of increasing the supply of housing in our city. Without adequate housing, the graduates of our schools can't build the next part of their lives here. Our local businesses can't expand without places for more employees to live, and all of our quality of life suffers. As you all know, we have a housing crisis here in Kingston with a severe shortage of housing at all price points, and this results in substandard expensive housing in addition to a homelessness and displacement crisis. We need a zoning code that supports and encourages additional housing at many price points, including housing affordable to people earning 25% of AMI, 50% of AMI, and 75% of AMI. Everyone at all income points in our community deserves housing that is affordable to them, and I'm glad to know that you're building as much as possible into the new zoning code to make that possible. I also want to highlight that not all housing units contribute equally to alleviating our housing crisis. As the city incentivizes and invests in housing creation, we should pay close attention to creating housing units that are for residents of our community. Second homes and vacation rentals do bring tourism dollars, but if that's where our housing supply grows, it will remain impossible to staff the small businesses where those tourism dollars are spent. The resounding message that the Rent Guidelines Board has heard from owners, from tenants, from people who have been priced out of Kingston, people who are trying to move to Kingston for local jobs, and others, is an urgent need for an increased supply of housing at all price points. That must include deeply affordable housing for those who earn below the area median income. Those folks are more likely to be our neighbors whose in-person work at stores, schools, restaurants, laundromats, hospitals, and in tourism and agriculture create the distinctive vitality of our city and need to live close by their work. Thank you for ensuring that the revised zoning code that marks such an investment in our community's future is also an investment in
30
all of our
seconds.
neighbors and all of our community members' futures by ensuring careful attention to increasing affordability and supply of housing. Thank you.
Stefan Safer.
Stefan Saffer. Safer is nice too. I'm Stefan Saffer. I don't live in Kingston directly, but we run Artport Kingston, the exhibition space down in the Rondout. And I followed the zoning code because I worked in urban development areas for about 15 years as an artist. And I have to say, congratulations. I think it's a great piece of work. However, of course, there will be details later which may have to be adjusted when things go into practice. But overall, I think this is not a bad code. I am also thinking about affordable housing. However, I don't think that the zoning code alone can fix that. It's an investment problem. It's worldwide, by the way, not just Kingston. Berlin, where I'm from, in Germany has the same problem like you, but on a much larger scale. And the reason why they have that is that the politicians did not on time invest in any affordable housing, even though they knew that there will be more kids coming and more people. So that is the reason why that is. I hope that I think more relaxed zoning code, which allows living and working in houses, will open up for more flats and for more people to live in there. And I am an advocate for not only affordable housing, but also affordable workspace, because we see this with young artists. They need affordable workspace, and there isn't much affordable workspace at all. So living and working is maybe a good thing, and I would make that a priority over parking a car. Parking a car is also important, but there could be more bikes in the city. There's a lot of hysteria about accidents which happened in Kingston, which I think should not be exaggerated, because if you have pickup trucks with no dead angle warner and you have bicyclists who have no neon shirts on and no reflectors, and if you don't teach both parties how to deal with each other, you will make more accidents. It has to be a bit of an education thing as well, and maybe a few adjustments. But overall, I think the city should put the foot down on more bicycling. You see it in other cities that even families who need a job or whatever, they cycle to the job, or they get driven to a parking lot with a bus where the car is and then drive to the job. That's all possible. So I don't think that's going to be a big problem.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, all right. The only thing I did not understand in this process was how on draft 3, the Common Council came back with this parking thing as an intervention. I first thought somebody put that in, but these are specialists, and how can you wait until draft 3 to make such an important input? That's just unlogic to me, but I'm new to the process. I'm not a specialist like all of you. And again, I congratulate you overall to the zoning, and I hope that
Thank
this
you. Your
goes
time's
through
up. Thank
and we
you.
can go ahead.
Thank you. Next speaker is Michael Kontrowski.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this body once again, and I wanted to commend you on draft 4.1 in addressing the issue of parking, which emerged in the previous draft. And thinking about the city's growth, the growth of Kingston, and all of the trade-offs that need to happen to assure that that growth encompasses affordable housing, economic development, inclusive communities. Parking is in many ways an issue that gets a lot of emotional attention, but we have 100 years of history and data now showing what off-street parking requirements actually lead to in terms of policy outcomes. And we see that removing these types of requirements, in fact, enables more affordable housing, more types of land uses, less impact on goods and services, and we see that removing these types of requirements, in fact, enables all of the things that we do want in policy. The code that this form-based code would replace is from the 1960s. All of the beloved parts of Kingston, the majority of them, predate the existing code. So in fact, to get back to more beloved parts of Kingston, I find that this new draft code actually does accomplish that. And the only question I have in the new draft 4.1 is related to major site plans, because it gives a lot of discretion to the planning board in terms of having public comments on major site plans. And I would say that if that is a possible moment to include more parking, then really it should be revisited looking at that point in draft 4.1. But otherwise, I commend you in this new draft. Thank you.
Emily Hauser.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I first of all wanted to say that it seems like you did a good job in figuring out the corner stores or neighborhood businesses from the comments from the last meeting. And I wanted to also say that I am concerned about the change in whether a public hearing would be a public hearing for a site plan, whether the planning board may hold a public hearing or shall, and I think the shall should go back in. And this is for major site plans, even though this might slow down some of the projects. I think that the public needs to have a say. So I think we need to have that word should go back from take may out and put shall in. And I'm not sure about the 62-day time when it's held. That was already in it, so I'm not sure I don't know why they put 62. Is that giving the public enough time to respond? And I just wanted to say that I'm here as a private citizen, but I am the chair of the Conservation Advisory Council, so I just want to make sure that you know that we really appreciate all the work that has gone into this, especially in terms of protection of the environment and open space and a walkable, sustainable community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian Pilateri.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for all the amendments to the most recent draft of the zoning code to make it more in line with what the intent of a form-based code is, which is to create clear and followable guidelines that clarify processes and increase our ability to build a city that meets the needs of our residents. It's a step towards building a more inclusive city with greater freedoms for residents and to help build a city around people and not just cars. I have some concerns, though, with the rewriting of the zoning code that changes requirements around public hearings related to major site plan review process and site plan approval process. Major site plans, seemingly by definition, will have larger impacts on the fabric of our community and should be required to have a public hearing. By ensuring that we have public hearings for all of the major site plans, we can help to streamline processes that will have a consistent process applied for all major site plans that come before the planning board, as opposed to an ad hoc decision. I asked the committee to add an addendum to the to the resolution adopting the Kingston form-based code that should state that the language in section 405.26 part D2 and E3 is returned to the language in the Kingston form-based code version 3. Also regarding short-term rental regulation, I'm really happy to see that the city is going to start regulating short-term rentals, and I would encourage you all to see this as a first step and not the last step in ensuring that we're increasing the supply of housing that's available to residents. I'm a renter here in Kingston. I live over on Westchester, and it's something that's deeply important to me and a lot of the people in my life. I really hope that the committee will consider limiting short-term rentals to primary residences only to help further increase the supply of housing within Kingston. Thank you so much.
Tanya Garment.
Hi, Tanya Garment, 102 Wart Street, Kingston. This process has been a long one, and it's been a quite engaged process, more than we ever have in Kingston. Starting with the process to write the request for proposals, which was more open than others, and the charrette week, and all the drafts. And I'm very thankful that the Common Council Laws and Rules Committee and the project team have been diligent in putting these additional drafts through, making them transparent, talking about them, having the special meetings. I want to address a couple things that came up tonight. Single family only zoning. Why did we ever make neighborhoods where if you couldn't afford an entire house, you weren't allowed to live? Walkable neighborhoods and corner stores are so important, and the planning board had some comments about that, but listening to what they were saying almost proved the point against what they were saying. They said, what about parking in front of these corner stores? You look at the Terry's Deli or whatever else they were pointing to, there's always a bunch of cars outside. This zoning code will make it that we will have the ability to have corner stores that serve the immediate neighborhoods, that those corner stores are not such a destination. And we'll have more of a walkable area, so even if you're in the neighborhood, you're more likely to walk there. Form-based codes have had a good amount of time over the past decade. Buffalo was the first one in New York State to do a citywide one. They got rid of their on-site parking requirements. Recently, there's a lot of articles, and I'm really happy to hear Common Council members have been reading these articles. And Bob Dennison at last week's Finance and Audit Committee meeting recommended a book that these articles were prompted on about parking requirements and parking management systems. And lastly, I'll say that like affordable housing, parking is also needed to be addressed holistically, and that Finance and Audit meeting was really heartening to see that the Common Council members are looking at all these things that we have been suffering through in holistic ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is actually online. So Lisa, this is Eileen Kutkaski.
Yes, Eileen Kutatsky, my husband and I are homeowners, Manor Avenue, Ward 2, Kingston. We continue to question aspects of the proposed form-based code. First, the outreach. I've repeatedly suggested that a direct mailing be sent to all property owners, residents, and businesses. None were sent, and the result is an uninformed and confused community. As for the big ideas, these originated from small sampling, unknown participants, infancy of the process, timed at the height of the pandemic. The surveys used were but a small sampling and unscientific. The big idea is now called a neighborhood business. They are to be located in residential areas. The uses for their upper floors still under debate. The types of businesses permitted will be broad and merely degrade residential neighborhoods. Another is to add apartment buildings, multiplexes, other mixed-use structures to traditionally residential neighborhoods. A developer could, for instance, purchase a modest home only to replace it with a 6-unit apartment house. There is no limit to the number of bedrooms per unit, and off-street parking has been eliminated. This is a developer's dream and will in no way enhance the quality of life for the residents, will surely add to the demand of our aging infrastructure. The elimination of off-street parking requirements is problematic. How will a DPW, first responders, disabled, aging population navigate an already cluttered street safely? This will surely contribute to unsafe streets for pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. Snow emergencies are already posing an issue for the city. Why are there no incentives to encourage permeable parking areas, which would alleviate stormwater runoff and provide for vehicle parking? Alderman-at-Large Schott's proposal to review the code yearly is a good one. However, 5-year look back may be too short, and how will improvements be implemented? I respectfully remind the committee and our government officials that this will be your legacy. Long after you've moved on, the residents will bear the consequences of the decisions you make today. Be mindful that the urbanization and overdevelopment will not necessarily provide affordable housing, nor will it enhance the quality of life for our community. However, it will surely be a great gift to developers. Infill of every available plot of land will eliminate open space for residents and our natural world for which we are stewards. Advocates point to large urban cities like Miami, Buffalo, and those in California to make the argument for adoption. We are none of those places. We are Kingston and must not be used as a great urban experiment. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last speaker, but I do want to open it up if there's anyone that would like to speak. I'll ask that you come to the podium. We have one online? Okay. No? Okay, I'll ask again, is there anyone in council chambers that would like to speak that has not already spoken? We do?
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to keep this real quick. I'm just going to add my voice to the, well, first I reside at 254 Delaware Avenue, that's in Ward 8, and I served on the zoning task force that selected Dover Cole. And I just wanted to add my voice to the major site plan review process and request that the word require a public hearing be put back in with respect to major site plans as it is in draft 3. And it dropped out to may hold a public hearing rather than require a public hearing. I could see where that could be problematic going forward, where the public comes in and there's a major site plan and they can only submit written comments pursuant to SECRA rather than being able to comment live. So with that, I think I'm done and you can move on. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Kevin. One more online. Oh, hi. Ari?
Yeah, that's me.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you could just state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. So my name is Ari Goldstein, and I live at 127 Fair Street in Kingston. And here's my statement. And this is specifically speaking to the abolition of the off-street parking requirements. So as a concerned citizen and former member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Kingston, I feel strongly that the abolition of mandatory off-street parking minimums be upheld in the nascent form-based zoning code. Zoning codes are the DNA of cities. They mandate what can and cannot be built and dictate the shape of buildings, contour of streets, and indirectly impact the economics, diversity, and vibrancy of the municipalities they serve. Zoning codes can either promote or stifle urban growth. Cities that are walkable and bikeable are ecologically sound, economically resilient, more equitable and attractive to many, and promote healthier communities. Off-street parking requirements are an affront to these qualities. They promote structures that favor drivers, often at the expense of pedestrians. They frequently prevent adaptive reuse of existing buildings. They also pass on costs of land use and construction to those who do not make use of parking lots. By abolishing off-street parking requirements, the City of Kingston will be able to allow for greener development, healthier citizens, as well as diversity of businesses. It is the right decision for the future of our city. And that's it.
Thank you. Did I see any other hands? No. Yeah? You could send in written comments anytime. So, yeah, what was that? Until when? I mean, it was not, the committee hasn't voted on it, but I think the safe bet would be July 11th would get to the next common council meeting, but I don't think anything will even be on the agenda then. If that helps. Sorry, it's not like a clear deadline because it's not actually officially been voted on, passed through committee yet. And I always encourage everybody to reach out to the alderman, your alderman in your ward anytime.
Okay. I'll ask again, are there any other speakers in council chambers and or online? No? Okay, so we're going to close the portion of our public comments, and we are going to begin our Laws and Rules Committee meeting. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. Our job here is to deliberate over these resolutions that we have in front of us. You're welcome to stay, or you can leave. But there will be no further discussion as far as public comments are concerned. Okay?
Just like to state for the record to the committee that I promised there would be dessert.
Just my pesky reminder to use your microphones and please talk into them because it is harder to hear in this room on Zoom. Thank you, and I will remind you as needed.
Okay, are we all set? Ready? Okay, so tonight we have before us the 4.1 draft. There are 4 separate resolutions related to the rezoning that we will potentially discuss and vote on tonight. That being parking, short-term rentals, affordable housing standards, and then the entirety of the form-based code. Okay, I see our housing director here. Bartek, did you want to address the committee?
Yes, I just want to add that in addition to those 4 resolutions, we also have a resolution to pass the final generic environmental impact statement as part of the seeker process. So that would be the 5th resolution. As requested by the committee when we last met, we did pull out the short-term rental parking and affordable housing standards to be voted on separately. And we also released what we're calling a 4.1 version, which made a few minor changes to the 4.1 version based on the direction given by the Laws and Rules Committee on May 31st. I believe the 4.1 version reflects the desires of the committee. Happy to answer any further questions.
Okay, thank you. So what I will do is read the resolutions. We'll deal with them separately. Okay? Yes.
Can I ask a question that's outside of the resolutions, but something that was brought up in the comments, the major site review, because we didn't discuss that at our last big meeting. So I'm hoping we could just stop and talk about that to make sure that we're all on the same board with that, because it just wasn't brought up last time. And I've had comments outside of this meeting, and we just heard three folks talk about it. So I know that there was differences between 3.0 and 4.0. Bartek, do you mind speaking on this?
Right. So in the 3.0 version, public hearing was required for a major site plan. In the 4.0 version, it was changed to May. That was a request by the planning department to change it to May, because that is exactly what happens now. Meaning the Common Council determines on a project per project basis whether they should call a public hearing. And typically, if there's the least bit of controversy, right, they have no problem calling a public hearing. But administratively, it would be a burden to require it of every single major site plan. I did also just want to clarify that it is also stated in the code that for any project over 2 acres, public hearing is required. So for those larger projects, public hearing will still be required, but we changed it to May because planning felt like it would be a burden to always require a public hearing.
Bartek, could you give us an example of a project or two recently that did not have public hearings?
So for instance, I mean, right now the planning board deals with all kinds of matters. Like, for instance, one of their agendas recently, right, there were 20 items, right, where an applicant is maybe renewing is requesting a lot line change or it's a renewal of a special permit. So some of these matters under the new code won't necessarily be going to the planning board anymore because there'll be a minor site plan. But right, for some of the smaller projects, trying to think of another example. If planning was here, I'm sure they would have many. But there's a lot of more routine business, such as like lot line changes or special permit renewals, right, where a public hearing isn't really necessary.
Hi. I just would like to say, given the fact that we are going from major and minor, we're having, a completely different system. And as a speaker earlier pointed out, it would be confusing to not have a public hearing for a major site plan that would require a public hearing for a seeker process. So I would be in favor of that. It be required for major.
But that would happen anyway, though. Most major site plans would require a public hearing.
Well, under the changes made in the 4.0 version, they would not necessarily be required. The Common Council has the option on whether to require.
On the major one, on the major site, okay.
Yes.
So
excuse me, the planning board, right, on a per project basis would vote, say, hey, this project has some potential impacts, we should have a public hearing.
But the Common Council has oversight on this, so the Common Council could require the planning board to have one if it's so deemed it desirable?
Only right now in the process of the zoning code, once we pass this, and if it says May, then the council doesn't have any oversight over it. So it's
strictly the planning board is the final arbiter of whether or not to have a public hearing as currently?
Right, correct. I mean, the council could always say in a year, this actually hasn't worked out, we're going to change this language to, so that, but, yeah.
May I follow? So the other, my follow-up question is, this is very late in the game to be looking at this, and I do not want to put this off because of one word, but this is not our last opportunity to change it. We can revise it, amend it going forward if we deem it in our collective wisdom that that's the appropriate thing to do. Is that
Yes.
correct?
So we could always, right here in committee, we could always add that word in, which will not further delay anything. So if we wanted to say.
Or if we wanted to leave it as is and have it be optional, and we saw how things went in 6 months or a year, at that point too, we could amend it to make it mandatory, right?
Yes, especially we'll have that look back period written in there, which I never said 5 years. I want it sooner than that. But yeah, but we could also make changes here that doesn't delay it. I mean, this is the whole purpose of committee meetings is to deliberate, discuss, decide, change. So I'm actually kind of curious what other people's thoughts are on.
Well,
Let me,
let's get Bob.
yeah, can I ask a
Yeah.
question? This is not going to supersede the public hearing requirement under SECR, right?
No.
Okay, so a major project that has any controversy or anything of interest or be as a type 1 is going to have a public hearing under SECR. Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am, I'm going to ask you, ma'am, please. So I'm going to ask you to leave. I'm going to ask you to leave. Thank you. Thank you. Gosh, I forgot my train of thought. So I would not have an issue with changing the word may to require. I think it's important that we have public hearings and that that the public has a right to come in and make comments.
I would vote in the opposite direction, respectfully. I think I'm saying something that I think is very politically incorrect, but I think public hearings are necessary and a good idea, and they can also be onerous, time-consuming, and just add weight to a decision-making process and just make it go on and on. So I think it's our decision here whether we trust the planning board to make appropriate decisions or we want to, like mommy and daddy, tell them what to do. And I vote for autonomy and giving organizations the authority to do as they will, and if they screw up, then you come back and you address that. But pending that, I am in favor of keeping it as may.
I understand. I would rather be proactive and not wait for a screw up, though. Yes.
I would just like to clarify. So Bardik, you're saying the reason that planning asked for this to go from required to may is because that's the current practice.
Correct.
I mean, I wish, I didn't think of reaching out to Dover and Cole about this. I could follow up, but what was their reasoning for the 3.0 saying it required? Because, yeah,
Dover Cole is on the Zoom. If you want them, Amy should be on the Zoom. If Elisa could promote Amy to panelist, Amy Groves.
It's like the Wizard of Oz.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Hi, Amy. This is Andrea. Thanks for joining us. We didn't know you were here, so we're grateful for your presence. So we're talking, as you probably could hear, about the major site review, and we know that in 3.0, your recommendation, or Dover Cole's recommendation, was to have the planning board, shall have public hearings on major site reviews, which our planning department requested that turn into may. So I was wondering your reasoning for having it as required. and how you feel about it going to not required.
So again, I think this both the requiring it and then, the change at for the final draft, both of those, came with discussions with planning, and their input on, how they thought it would work best. And kind of the final decision was that, leaving at the discretion of the planning board, should work well because they can require the hearing when it's needed, when there's a, complex issue to be decided. So I think, we're, as authors of the code, kind of default to the, the planning's, experience with these matters and how they have been, handled in the past. One of the goals of the code is to streamline the process. So that was kind of a consideration from our standpoint. I think we are, in supportive of streamlining the process for simple, easy, applications and requiring the hearing when it's needed.
Yes.
Thank you, Amy.
Any other comments for Bartek or for Amy?
None for Amy. But for Bartek, I always have comments for Bartek.
Okay.
It's a process comment. And you and I have had conversations about the final generic environmental impact statement and the process of its approval and the code's approval. And really, probably it's a question for Andrea. My understanding is we have to accept the final generic environmental impact statement. Then we have to issue findings, and then we can approve the code. I don't know the time period between our acceptance of the final generic environmental impact statement and our issuing of our findings and accepting the code.
10 days.
10 days. So we can't do that at the same meeting.
We cannot, but we could write in the resolution that it would go forward, 10 days afterwards,
Okay.
or at
So we
least
can
10
pass a
days. Have the
resolution
language.
to be enacted 10 days from
We
the date.
could do that, or we could just have our minds kind of set and then come back and do it again. But yes, it has to be at least 10 days between the two,
Okay.
or between
Okay.
the seeker and the. Mhm.
All right. Okay.
I just would like to reiterate that we've had people here tonight that are part of, major boards and commissions that have more knowledge and experience than ourselves regarding planning boards issues. And if they are calling for a required public hearing on major site plans, I believe that should be a persuasive argument, given that we are making minor site plans versus major site plans, which is why shall was probably in there to begin with in our current code. So I just think that given major sites plans being much more complex moving forward, and what would go before the zoning code should require public input. Thank you.
Okay. Well, all right. So let's see how people feel about this as far as changing the wording from may to require. So I'll ask you to raise your hand if you think that we should change the word from may to require. All those in favor of changing it, please show by raising your hand. All those who are not in favor. Okay, thank you. And that's how we'll leave it, because that's the way we're going to do it. Yes, ma'am.
Bartek, when we're going to do these look backs every 6 months, a year, I'm assuming you'll be the one that kind of shepherds the process. Can you keep track of these conversations like this to make sure that we come back and address the specific ones? I'm sure there's going to be other things that arise, but I think it'll be really important to make sure that we have a binder someplace of concerns and take it from there.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so are you all ready to hear the resolutions and vote?
Yes.
Yes? All right, so the first resolution. Yes.
You're subbing
Yeah.
for Barbara, so yes. Am I part of these are you subbing for Michael? Did he?
Yes.
Oh, hi.
Okay.
Yeah, so the voting members are Rita, Carl, Bob, Rennie, and Naima.
Right.
There's Naima subbing for Barbara, Bob subbing for Michael.
Right.
And Michelle and I have a voice.
Okay. First resolution, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, adopting Section 405.19 Affordable Housing Standards of the Kingston Forward Form-Based Code. We'll do them individually. Can I get a motion? Yes?
I make a motion that we adopt.
You can deal with them separately. And then, well, motion and then I'll call for discussion.
Motion to discuss. We need a motion for it to discuss. Anybody? Right. Oh, I guess. Carl, do you know, you have two, you could motion to discuss, or you could motion to adopt.
I'd like to move to adopt. I don't know, think we I'll happily withdraw it if people want to discuss. I don't think people do.
Yeah, we'll call for a discussion. Okay. All right. Any discussion? Second. Any discussion? Yes.
Which one are we on?
The first one,
Affordable housing.
affordable housing.
We're seconding, motion to adopt. It's like the Marx Brothers come to the city government.
All right, Rennie, what was your second for? Was it to?
Let's just discuss.
All right. Too many hands in the kitchen right now. Okay? All right, so any discussion on this first resolution? Yes.
So you'll hear my voice now. Thank you. I've been reviewing the Ulster County housing reports issued for 2020 and 22, combined with HCS data available for Kingston, and I would like to make the following observations. According to ACS data, incomes in Kingston rose between 16 and 21, with household incomes for everyone with a 35% increase. For homeowners, the median income rose 34.5% from $68,250 to $91,697. For renters, the median income increased 38% from $29,000 in 2016 to $41,000 in 2021. While these increases in salaries sound promising, still more than half of renters are rent burdened, paying more than 30% of their salary for rent and utilities. 25%, which is 1/4 of our community, is severely rent burdened, paying more than 50% of their salary for rent and utilities. Renters earn less than 50% of homeowners. The 2016 difference and the 2021 was between renters and homeowners used to be only $38,000 and it's now risen to $50,000. The City of Kingston's total housing units increased between 2020 and 2022 by 424 units, yet the number of rental units fell 1,037 from 2020 to 2022, which is a decrease of 18%. The percentage of renters in the City of Kingston dropped by 10% between 20 and 22. Kingston now is 42% renters. 2 years ago, it was 52%. During the time the county compiled their reports, they looked at the number of advertised apartments. We've seen an increase of available units from 44 to 118. The prices for the average rents went up by more than salaries. Studios went up 31.5%, one bedrooms went up 36%, two bedrooms went up 40%, three bedrooms went up 51%. An average rent for a 3-bedroom is $2,225, up from $1,480. Here where I am in Ward 9, a studio is currently listed at $1,650 and a one bedroom is listed at $1,700. The poverty rate in Kingston is 19%. Between 2017 and 21, it stayed at 19%. Back in 2010, the number of people living in poverty was 3,572. We now have 4,466 people living in poverty in Kingston. The national and state average, excluding New York City, is 13%. Ulster County is 13%. The highest poverty rate in Mid-Hudson region is Sullivan County at 14%. Kingston is 19%. The City of Kingston's renters AMI of $41,150 falls in the 70% of Kingston AMI and within the 30 to 40% range of the county AMI of $96,000. To build new construction that provides affordability to 80 to 120 of the county AMI is actually subsidized luxury housing for Kingston because rents would be $1,920 a month for a family of 4 at 80% AMI and $2,880 a month at 120% AMI. These AMIs already reflect a higher cost than the average rent on a 3-bedroom apartment at $2,225 in 2022. What we are seeing is wealthier people moving in, our city becoming a tourist mecca with 199 full home short-term rentals. Our current residents are either displaced with the loss of rental units or suffering and sacrificing their quality of life with increasing rents. We have a housing crisis of epic proportions. We need deeper affordability, lower AMIs and the inclusionary zoning, and not go backwards in our current zoning code, which has this council passed in 2021, which bans non-owner occupied short-term rentals. We need to realize the realities of what Kingston residents need. It will take quite a while for the market forces to work and bring down rents in the way everyone hopes that they will, but most of the working families, senior citizens, and people with disabilities will be displaced by then. I urge all of you on the council to please take this information into consideration because the future of Kingston does bear our legacy with these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Andrea?
Well, I wasn't sure if anybody, I had something related to the resolution, but not related to that. Something that we talked about is adding the housing work group. So I would like to add a whereas, a request that we add a whereas to this, which would say, whereas the Common Council finds it necessary to create a housing working group to oversee and optimize the city's affordable housing plan. This was a way of making sure that we have continued oversight in this, which we have talked about and I thought had support to do. So if you guys are still supportive of that, I would like to add that whereas in.
I move that we add an amendment to this with that whereas clause that Andrew just laid out.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposers? No? Okay. All right, so we should add that on the end of this. Well, I was writing, but I didn't catch everything that you said, so I can just.
Just write it in this and then
We don't need to put it on our committee, and just say as attached.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could even just take this and use this as the attachment.
And I have a question, Madam Chairperson, when you're done with that.
Yep.
May I ask Bartek a question for
Sure.
clarification?
Sure.
Okay. So we heard one of the people during the testimony note that the zoning code alone cannot solve the housing crisis. I think all the points that Michelle made are really poignant, things that we must absolutely hold in mind as we go through this process. And I was hoping that you could remind us why the numbers in the current section here regarding the housing standards, affordable housing standards, are set where they are. What are the advantages and any disadvantages that you see?
The numbers that are in the 4.1 version are our best possible guess, an attempt to balance the strong desire to mandate a certain amount of affordable housing while also ensuring that projects, housing projects are actually financially feasible. And so looking at other municipalities in New York State that have inclusionary zoning requirements, where have they set their levels and what is the response that they've seen? So these numbers are informed, well-informed proposal for what we think the code should have. And as I mentioned in my last meeting, I personally will be looking at these numbers quite closely. Other municipalities that have adopted inclusionary zoning provisions previously, they frequently fine-tune them based on market conditions, based on how developers are responding. And so it's my expectation that Kingston will be doing the same in the coming years.
So that makes me think two things. One is, we have other things that we've done in the city. Kingston Housing Authority is currently in the process not only renovating many of its units, but also adding new units. And a lot of these units are for low-income and extremely low-income Kingstonians. We definitely need more housing. We also have demonstrated as a council that we're ready to take chances, that we're ready to push very hard for innovative and new ways of thinking about how to solve the housing crisis. So I feel confident with the numbers where they are, and that with Bartek's close attention and our close attention, we'll be able to move those numbers as we look and see what the conditions are. Because if our numbers are too strict and we have no development, then we can have any numbers we want for AMI. But if no developers are going to actually build units because of those numbers, then we're out. So,
if I could just add one more detail. There's a reason why RUPCO supports the zoning code, right? There's an entity that develops 100% affordable housing. These standards that we're discussing, 10%, 20%, these numbers won't impact them. But when taking a look at the zoning code as a whole, it supports affordable housing wholeheartedly. The zoning code will ensure that RUPCO can build more projects going forward in the city of Kingston. Other affordable housing developers will see the same thing when they look at the zoning code because it supports housing. So I'll just add that one other detail.
Thank you. Any other comments before we? I actually agree with you. While I'm not happy with where our current numbers are and our current AMI numbers are, I do agree with what you just said. If we do nothing, we further halt affordable housing perspective. So, thank you. Yes.
And just I hope everybody saw the email Corp Council sent out about a week ago with some case law in reference to this topic. So just refresher on some of that too. This is also important to note.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I am going to, let me read this resolution one more time since we put the amendment in. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, adopting Section 405.19, Affordable Housing Standards of the Kingston Forward Form-Based Code with amendment as attached here 2. And so we will attach the resolution, the whereas clause to the committee report. I'm going to call for a motion to adopt this resolution on affordable housing. Call for the vote. We made the motion already and seconded. We'll call for the vote. All voting members, all in favor? Aye. Any opposers? No. Okay, thank you. And for those of the members that are sitting in for others, if you could just cross out that name and just write your name in. While that's going around, the second resolution that we'll deal with tonight is the parking standards. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, adopting 405.16 off-street parking standards of the Kingston Forward Form-Based Code. Do I have a motion to adopt? I can't, or is he, was his first hand up first or second? Okay, well, that's the wrong committee report. Okay, we'll call for any discussion?
I'm very excited that we're looking at this particular resolution. It's been a long time building that parking is, in fact, a way of limiting affordable housing because of the resources required and the ways that it works. I know that some people are concerned about this, and I hear those concerns. However, a lot of the parts of town that are very old, they've been able to manage parking from before we even had a code. So in other parts of town, like most of the ward that I'm in, there's plenty of room for on-street parking. Moreover, there's an added benefit to on-street parking, which is that it can actually serve to limit speeding in town because it adds a visual clutter, in a sense, to the streets. So besides the reasons that are given usually, I think there's a lot of benefit for this particular aspect of the code, and I'm very much in favor of it.
Discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Aye. Any opposers? Thank you very much. Okay. The next resolution on the table is short-term rentals. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, adopting Section 405.21 D2 point, is that supposed to be like that? D2 of the Kingston Forward Form-Based Code on the regulation of short-term rentals, creating 3 short-term rental permits and limiting full short-term permits to no more than 1% of the city's long-term housing stock. Is the motion to adopt? Any? And I think, Bob, you went up next. Any discussion? No? No. Okay. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposers? Oh, no, I'm looking over here. All right, it passes. Okay. We have a resolution, next resolution, let me deal with this one, of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, accepting a final generic environmental statement for the Kingston Forward citywide zoning. Motion.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the.
Well, I changed the order. Okay, we'll go back. The next one is you're right. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, adopting the Kingston Forward and Form-Based Code. Motion to adopt. Any Scott Childress? Any discussion? Yes.
I think there's been a massive amount of work put into this by many members of the community. Tanya Garment, for example, has been involved with this from the very beginning. It's generated a lot of interest, a lot of discussion, a lot of creative work has gone into it. And I think that overall, this is a fantastic step forward for us. My central concern has been that the type of code that we've had heretofore was literally developed in the early 20th century as a means of creating racial segregation. Recently, a number of scholars, such as Nathaniel Hendren and Judd Reddy, have demonstrated that the most effective way of undermining, of reducing poverty is economic integration, of having people of very different economic statuses in the same communities. I see this as a way of pushing us, of helping us, of urging us forward to putting ourselves in the place where we can make it possible for all the citizens of Kingston to have better outcomes over the course of their lives. I see this not just as simply a question of how we organize our city, but a question of how we enact our moral sensibilities of what's right and what's wrong. I'm very much in favor of this and look forward to voting for this and before the full council, voting in favor of this before the full council.
I just want to, I think I'm supporting this. I think it's an important improvement, and I think one of the things that we should not lose sight of is that this is a dramatic change from the codes of the 60s and car-centric focus on our existing code, moving us back toward a more hospitable, walkable, youth-friendly community. So I'm going to support it actively.
I'll come in too and say that I agree with what both of these gentlemen have said, and my perspective is that of a sustainability activist for 30 years. And in 1990-something, I learned of a book by a guy named Christopher Alexander called A Pattern Language, which is this brilliant vision of what livable cities of the sustainable future might look like, and he could have been the one who drafted this code. It is just so on the money in terms of creating a structure that allow us to become an effective, sustainable city, and I am thrilled, proud, and honored to be part of a legislative body that is making this happen. Thank you.
This is probably going to be one of the highlights of my tenure, because I've been hoping for this since 2018, when I think Tanya and I started a little book group about the color of law in my living room. So this is super. This is super exciting. So thank you for everybody, specifically Bartek, since you've been here, diving headfirst, because we had already been years into the mix, into this. I do just have a question on the last section, the task force. That's something that your department is going to. It's going to be department heads or city staff, I'm assuming. Is that can you just explain your idea on the task force and who's going to be looking at this? Does Dover Cole actually stay engaged for a bit, or is that the end of them for us?
So our contract with Dover Cole will formally end. However, that doesn't mean that we might need to engage them, especially in the first 6 months or so, to help planning interpret parts of the code, or just to add some capacity in interpreting site plans. Regarding the task force, I do think that my office and planning could head the task force, but certainly it could include members of the council or even someone that's not in City Hall. So it's kept general, but I do think it should be representative of various groups that are interested in the zoning code and in terms of how it's being implemented.
Oh, great. That's what I was hoping to hear. And a shout out and thank you to Dover Cole for everything, because they've just been absolutely wonderful, and I didn't mean to almost kill you off there.
Right. Yes.
Thank you. I just want to say, in spite of my, hard advocacy for changes to the inclusionary provisions. I just want to say that overall, I'm very excited about the code. I'm very excited. I moved to Kingston because it is a walkable city. My neighborhood is walkable. I would like to see that improve for all of the city. I know that it will, increase everybody's quality of life. It will help families age in place. I completely support the ADUs, which, I really wanted us to look at a couple of years ago. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. And I look forward to, us being leaders in this area. Thank you. And thank you for all your work, Bartek. It's been really profound to see how hard you have worked. So thank you.
Well, I guess I'll add my 2 cents. First, thank yous to everyone that had any part in putting this together. We did, in the big scheme of this, I look at this as, I played a part in it, but to watch you work and really handle this and handle us with all of our questions and all of our changes and revisions, and the way you took the time to really think and be so tedious in your thoughtfulness about this is very much appreciated. And I'm recognizing you as well, because you are here all the time. You show up, and so very much appreciated to you, and as well to the public too for the engagement that we had surrounding this. It was a tedious process, and I'm really excited about this form-based code. As Rennie mentioned, as a person of color, this is really going to open up avenues for more people of color to join into the per se American dream. So I do appreciate all of the work that you've done. I appreciate this council. You guys went hard with this, and so I'm just happy to be a part of this. And I do think that this is going to be legacy for years to come. This is going to be one of those things that other people look at and say, Kingston did this, and they're going to want to follow behind it. So, job well done, council. Well done. And with that, Naima, did you? And so with that, I'll call for the vote. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposers? No. All right. Yay. Yay. Right. Go. The environmental review.
Could I ask Bartek to briefly remind us what this one is about?
This council previously passed. So as with the adoption of the zoning code, we have to follow the state seeker process. So we've been following the steps in that. Previously, this council adopted a draft generic environmental impact statement. We released that to the public for public comment. There was a 30-day window. There was also a public hearing. In this final generic environmental impact statement, we respond to the comments received within that comment period about the draft generic environmental impact statement. So now this is the final generic environmental impact statement. It includes our responses to the public comments received.
Question. So do we need to add the language about the public hearings to be enacted after 10 days?
Well, what I was going to suggest after you do this is, so you all just voted for those 4 resolutions, but we can't the council can't vote on those until this resolution is passed. So what I'm going to suggest is that, because they automatically go to the council floor, is that when they go to the council floor, somebody's going to make a motion to table them, the 4. The 4 will go back. You'll vote on this one on that evening, and then I'll call for a meeting, or, depending on the timing, we either do it at the next council meeting or we do it in 10 days. So there's nothing that actually has to, we don't have to do anything tonight. It will all be on the floor. Is that correct? All right, so that process will work.
Okay.
Right, but you do have to pass this resolution tonight. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And then this will be the only one that actually gets voted on at the next council meeting on the 11th.
Okay, so let me read. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, accepting a final generic environmental statement for the Kingston Forward Citywide rezoning. Motion to adopt? I feel like it's the same two people all the time.
I've got a lot of catching up to do. He's way ahead.
Okay. Any discussion on this? No? I call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposers? No? All right, and it passes. All right.
Yeah, I think that's his way of saying, pass me the cookies.
Martek, you bought a lot of cookies. Most of us haven't eaten dinner yet.
Oh, Bartek.
No. Not yet.
I think we're done.
We're just about to, though.
Would you take, if we voted against it, would you take them home?
Okay, cookies aside, anybody want to go home?
Yeah.
All right. Motion to adjourn? All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I really feel good about it.
Yeah, this is good.
Really good.
Let me-
We just have to make sure that one